Do you know what the stats are? I should have looked this up. Is there some kind of stats of like the number of like say men, that struggle with porn? I think it's really high. Do you know what it is?
70% of men in the church
Okay.
struggle with porn.
Welcome to the Carla Show, a weekly podcast designed to dig into the lives of everyday people. People who are making a positive impact, people who have risen above and overcome obstacles. Insights and stories from ordinary individuals who inspire us all towards the truly extraordinary. Here's your host.
Hey, it's Carla, and I'm really excited about today's interview. Actually, today's interview is going to be, it ended up being quite different than I thought, because on our pre-interview, I thought we would talk about a lot of different things. But what Josh told me, all of a sudden, it just came out that when he was 13, he started looking at porn, and he struggled with that for the rest of his adult life. So I'm really excited to have you hear his story, and also just to hear how he's overcome it. So he hasn't looked at porn for 2 years now. So there's a lot of hope here in this one. He gives us a lot of really key strategies on how to deal with it, how to get over it. So if you're struggling, or if you know someone who's struggling with any kind of addiction, I think this will be really helpful for you. All right, without further ado, let's get into the conversation. All right, well, welcome Josh Brown. He's my guest today, and Josh and I met at the Vince Del Monte Mastermind, and we're both kind of growing he's got mainly a nutrition business. Is that right, Josh?
Yeah, it's mainly nutrition right now. It'll be more than that in the future, but I try to stick to what I know.
Right. Okay. So nutrition business. I have a fitness and nutrition business. And so when I met him there, I just felt like this is a cool guy. And then when I started thinking of like the type of person I wanted on my podcast, he came to my mind and I was like, I got to connect with him. So we had a call and we got talking and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy has so much to share. So I'm really excited about getting into some nitty gritty stuff here, some things that are going to be helpful. And Josh is willing for the first time ever to kind of share exactly what he's been struggling with and like kind of getting more into the nitty gritty of that. Does that sound accurate, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an open book, and I'm willing to. I think that the more vulnerable people get, the more people they're able to help. So, Yeah, we were talking about that before, and how it's vulnerability is super important, because we keep our struggles to ourselves, and then we end up just everyone around us could be struggling with the same thing, and
They don't know.
And shame doesn't help anyone.
That's right. Yeah. And so the fact that you're open about your struggles, I thought was really awesome. We're going to get into that right away. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a little bit about where you grew up, a little bit about kind of what your family was like growing up?
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian family, and we were on the conservative side for sure. I had a brother, and we were best friends growing up, and it was we were two brothers. He was only a year and a half younger than me, so like we were best friends, and then sometimes worse enemies.
Yeah.
But we did everything together. We ended up moving when I was in grade 6 to Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and my dad got a job as a pastor there. And so he ended up, in 2 years, actually, he ended up being burnt out, dealing with people. And there was a board that was very stuck in their ways type thing. And he just felt like he couldn't do anything. And yeah, he ended up getting burnt out in 2 years. Being a pastor is hard, but that's pretty quick for anyone's standard. And so actually, a lot of the time growing up, my dad ended up struggling with migraines that kept on like getting worse and worse. And so actually, from age about 12 on, kind of in those like almost formative teen years, I would say, like when a boy kind of wants his dad to show him like all like fixing cars and kind of stuff like that, and hunting and all that kind of thing. He was just kind of struggling just to function. And so I actually had to forgive him in my mid-20s, because I felt like even though he was there, he was very distant. And that's kind of my own issue, right? I know every guy, every girl has to kind of get over some of these issues when they grow up. But so then moving on from there, I ended up staying, and my parents moved back to the same community that we came from. So that was just south of Winnipeg in Manitoba. And I stayed because I'd met a girl, and we dated for 3 years. we had spent some time apart in that time. Like I went to Bible school for 1 year, and then she graduated, and then she went to Bible school for 1 year. So we did the whole long distance thing for a while, and we ended up getting married. And yeah, I don't know. What do you want? Do you want me to keep going in that direction?
Yeah. So you ended up getting married, and then so okay, that kind of helps us out. So you're married. So now where are you at? So right now you're living in Carlisle, Saskatchewan, small little town.
Right. Yeah. Presently I am. Yeah.
Presently, and you have how many kids?
3 kids. I have 3 girls.
Okay, 3 girls. And what are their ages right now?
Brielle's 7, Evie's 5, and Serafina is 2.
Okay, good. Good. You remembered their ages. That's good. Impressive.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to not stutter there.
Sometimes it's hard to keep track. It seems like they grow up so fast, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have 5 though, so I'm okay still.
Yeah, right. So tell me about let's talk a little bit about your nutrition. I just want to hear kind of where that came from, and then we'll kind of get into the big kind of struggle that you've had sort of ongoing in your life and how that's impacted you and your family and everything. But just let's just talk a little bit about your nutrition. What happened there? Why did you decide to get into nutrition coaching? Because you're actually on the Saskatchewan Power Line Company, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, I work for SaskPower as a lineman. My like title is Power Line Technician, which kind of makes me sound smart, but it's I work with big wires, basically 3 wires.
Okay, yeah.
But,
3 wires.
so
okay.
what I did was we ended up moving to Colville, which is part of my apprenticeship with SaskPower. And I started going to the gym and basically burning the candle at both ends. We grew up, my mom always cooked from scratch, but she kind of didn't really, she says she knew how to be healthy and all that stuff, but we always had pop and we always had cookies and all that type of stuff. And like you could eat a lot of it. And so this kind of habits kind of compounded into my 20s. And I ended up in a job where I found it stressful. Again, my own issues. And I was working out like a madman. I was crushing pre-workouts at like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. because I wanted to be there for Brielle, who was very young at the time. And I didn't want to be leaving in the evening because, I mean, that was the only time I had with her, right? Was like from 6 o'clock to when she went to bed, really. So, and then in the midst of that, I had, no bad sleep, bad nutrition. I didn't realize that I had gluten issues and dairy issues. And I was just basically running myself into the ground. I ended up, I'm 30 pounds lighter right now than I was then. And so in the midst of this too, I would say at about 12 or 13, I'm just going to go right into it.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So like a lot of young guys at about 12 or 13, we got the internet in my house and it was awesome. But then there's also this insidious thing that so many people and more women are dealing with too, is pornography. And it seems like it starts out, I know it's maybe sounds weird to say this, but it starts out almost like innocent. It's like, what is this? And, but it never stays in the same level. And that's what's so, cancerous about porn is it just kind of infiltrates every part of your life. And eventually it affects how you think. It affects, you at a brain level. And so I ended up where I was in my mid 20s and I was pretty good at like hiding that I had the issue and didn't really want to admit that I had an issue. I knew it was an issue, but I never would say like I was addicted type thing, which really, I went in it's a series called the Conquer series that churches put on. And basically they said, no matter how long your cycle is, like that kind of binge cycle, like it can apply to food too. Like it doesn't matter if your binge cycle is like 3 months or 6 months or a year. If you're consistently having that cycle, you're still considered an addict.
So
So
so you started like you first saw porn when you were about 13, and then
yeah,
basically from 13 into your 20s, you just like was it just like almost a daily thing, or was it kind of you'd go through cycles of
um,
like where you'd be on it and then
it
you'd be
would
off it?
it definitely be cycles. It would be because what I was doing is I was fighting a battle of willpower.
Mm,
And so we know that willpower wanes. You have lots of willpower. Sometimes if you get overtired, you have less willpower.
mm-hmm.
Um, if you're stressed out, you have less willpower. If you're doing all the things I was doing, you have less willpower. You're
Right.
beating your body up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got because I was in a place where I didn't want to be. I found my job stressful. Um, my whole life was kind of about this, like pushing that big dopamine button.
Mm,
So it was like I'm playing video games, which is they're designed to hit that dopamine button, right?
mm-hmm.
I'm looking at porn, I'm working out and pre-workouts also forcing a brain state change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up in a place where I was actually not able to remember the next step in jobs that I'd done many, many times. And that was really scary. I was like in my early 20s and I'm like, what is wrong with me? And then I started to have some anxiety about when I was going to have these little episodes.
Mm,
And I realize now that those were kind of hypoglycemic episodes. And like I was riding that blood sugar roller coaster all the time.
mm,
And I just didn't know what I didn't know.
mm-hmm.
So we ended up doing a 2 month stint on a transmission crew.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is I'm on the road for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that whole thing, I even was eating worse because we would work ridiculous hours. And that's when I started to like put on some pounds on top of all this.
Mm,
and yeah, so it basically came to a head. And I was not a very nice person to be around. I mean, maybe that's an overstatement. I didn't have much patience. It
mm,
was like I would either be fine or I'd be like snap.
mm.
And yeah, I wasn't very nice to my wife a lot of times, and our relationship was suffering from all this, and my confidence was in the crapper. It was just all these things were adding up, and part of the reason why I was basically distracting and avoiding and hiding from anything where people could kind of see into my life in a deep way.
So you were kind of
And
like the opposite of being vulnerable. You were trying to kind of hide. And like it sounds like, yeah, you basically ran yourself to the ground. So there you are, married. You had one kid at the time? Is that what you
yeah,
said?
Brielle
Okay.
she was pretty fresh when we were in Colville. Yeah.
Okay. So you had a new baby basically. And so you're trying to do all these things. You're trying to work out. You're trying to do, work at this kind of new type job. And then basically, like, it was getting so bad that your brain's not even functioning properly. You're forgetting stuff. So when you go to work, you're forgetting these things. And then that is stressing you out even more, causing more anxiety because then you're embarrassed that everybody can see the anxiety. Is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then guys are really good at making what they do who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I had like nothing.
Mm,
I was so much external focused. And then now my job, I'm failing basically at my
mm-hmm.
job. And that was, if I had to say I had a low point in my life, that was probably it.
Mm,
Then, things start to get better. I'll talk about some of the upswing too here.
mm-hmm.
What happens is that with SAS Power, you have a 4-year apprenticeship, and then you get your journeyman bid, and then you're lots of times you end up in a different place. So I purposely bid Carlisle, where I am now,
Mm-hmm.
and that was close to my wife's family, closer to my family. And the cool thing about my job now is that I have my own truck and I'm by myself a lot.
Mm,
So I got to kind of start to rebuild that confidence.
mm,
And honestly, if I wanted to take 30 minutes to think through a task, I could.
mm,
So I no longer had that like anxiety always in the background, like, oh, someone's going to find out that I'm stupid.
Yeah.
So I should say that in all this process, I had these two false beliefs that had came from my childhood. And I was teased very badly in grade 3. And what I came away from that with was, I'm not smart. And if people really get to know me, they're not going to like me. And those two beliefs, if you think of all the things I said, and then you put those two beliefs in there, that's, it's a recipe for exactly where I ended up. You avoid situations where people are gonna prove that you're stupid. So like any risk you avoid because it'd be too painful, or you think it's gonna be pain. So like, I've heard anxiety described as anticipation of future pain. And if you believe the future is bad, well, then it makes sense that you have anxiety. And so I ended up with these brain issues, all these type of things going on. And then I got to move to Carlisle, and kind of I removed that stress of wondering if I was going to mess up. Basically, I was like, I get to think through things, and that was the start of kind of the upswing of all this. I guess kind of relaxed. I was like, I can relax.
You don't have to worry about someone looking over your shoulder or making mistakes in front of anybody. You had time to breathe.
Yeah, and that's exactly what was happening on the crew. Is like there's always someone looking over your shoulder, and it ends up being, I mean, if I went back there now, I'd be fine. It's my issue, right? It was my issues, but so then I could relax at this new job. I'm a district operator. I'm by myself, and what started to happen was I discovered podcasts, actually, which is funny that I'm on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
And I started listening to this health information and a lot of alternative stuff, and I didn't realize how much power we actually have. I was very much kind of aligned with conventional medicine because it was the only thing that I really knew, and I would call it bro science. Was my strategy for for working out. It was like lift heavy weights, eat as much protein as you can, take a pre-workout, and that was about the extent of my nutrition knowledge. And so I realized that with these podcasts, that there's a lot we can do. And I basically came to a point where I told my wife, I was like, we have to start making changes, or else I have to stop listening to these podcasts, because I'm not going to be one of those people that is all head knowledge and no action.
Yeah.
'Cause I want to be a person of integrity. And as I saw my health improve, I also saw a lot of the mental things improve too. And I started to realize how destructive pornography had been, and it was in my life. And so I really started to kind of struggle all over again with it. Like, you almost get to a point where you just admit defeat. Like, I think with any addiction, but I'll just speak from my experience. I won't talk about other addictions. You really end up admitting that you're defeated and that you can't. There's just no way you can beat this, because
you've tried so many times and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was always an effort of will. And so my younger brother, he actually defeated it. He had victory in the area of porn, and he did it because he was talking about beliefs. And he's like, he fought his battle. He had victory, and he's like, I have no desire to look at porn anymore. And I was like, what? How does that work? And so he just basically started to lay out these beliefs, and he said, if you're looking at porn and you want to quit, you got to admit that there's something that's making it worth it for you. So it's worth it. And if you're still doing it, it's worth it. And you have to admit that to yourself. And I was like, well, you're right. I do think it's worth it. And then it made me think about kind of all the things that basically it's a shortcut. Every addiction is always a shortcut. It's and pornography is very it's very easy to hide a pornography addiction. It's on our devices, it's on my computer. But it comes out, eventually comes out. What it was doing in my life was it basically, the way that you view women, your expectations of what a woman wants to do or doesn't want to do are just warped. And it became something that was making the intimacy with my wife shallow, because and it's just, it's a separator, definitely a separator. In a lot of divorces, I won't spit out a stat because I don't know it, but it's a very large percentage of people where pornography is, one of the partners had an issue with pornography. And I was like, well, I don't want to be that person. So I started to examine these beliefs. And so I was thinking about, like, what are the benefits of porn? Because it's like, if you can think of one side of it, you can always invert it, and then and then that's going to be the negative side of it. So, like, what are the benefits? Well, there are benefits. The benefit is complete control. You have, it's novelty. It's just new every time, and it's private, and you fool yourself into believing that it is intimate. But all these things are actually false. And so when I started to realize, and my brother helped me realize this, he said, those two people don't really want to be there. Not even the guy that it's hard on both parties. There's a whole sex trafficking side of things that you're indirectly a part of. And you don't know if one of those people is there because of that. And so basically I started to dismantle these beliefs, and I found that when I made the positive side of those beliefs, like, it's not intimate, it's not worth it, that's when I started to have victory. And it's been probably 2 years since I've last looked at porn, and I what I found was, once I had those beliefs in place, I set up guardrails for myself.
How'd you do
And
that?
so, well, what I found lots of times was that things like Instagram were like a trigger, and then you would go, and that's kind of what would set you off. So what I know now is that if I click on someone's profile just because of how they look, I know that things in my head are starting to regress. And I know that if I let that go, I will be back to where I was. And so my guardrails are very narrow in that area, and it works for me. So if it's an awareness thing, I know that if I'm gonna start surfing on Instagram for stuff that isn't technically wrong, it's like, I know that's gonna trigger me, and I know that, and it's just not part of my life. So I set up these guardrails, and you could almost call them like awareness guardrails. And and since then, I've had victory. And I was going to say something else, but it slipped my mind.
So basically, you're saying, like, it's not a matter of saying, okay, I'm not going to look at porn, I'm not going to look at porn, I'm not going to look at porn. It's like, that's not even an option. Instead, I'm going to, like, not even look at things that could potentially trigger. And you know what? It's interesting when you said that, because a lot of times, like, I've thought the way that I present myself on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, like, I'm very modest. And part of the reason I'm modest is because I just feel like, you know, I want to be valued for for what I have to offer, not my body, but also like it is the last thing I want to do is be someone that was going to be causing someone like you, like some of these people that struggle with porn, to stumble because I'm, scantily clad or whatever. And there's a lot of women that do that. And I feel like I don't want to judge too harshly because, everyone has their reasons, but I just feel like there's so much of that out there. You get so much attention, right? Like you can get so many followers on
Yeah.
Instagram just by
It's-
doing that. And it's like, and I felt that pressure a bit, but I'm just like, I'm not going there. Like, that's just not what I'm going to do. That's not what I stand for at all.
like, well, part of of having a business online is going and reaching out to different people. And so it's crazy because I go to some profiles and I can't like a single picture. I'm like, I don't want someone to see that I've liked any of your pictures, and I'm off their profile, right? Because it doesn't, and it's kind of, it is kind of sad.
Yeah, I know I've
Really.
cleaned up my Instagram too. Like I don't have very many followers, or I mean, I don't follow very many people and stuff because I'm just like, I don't need that. Same with Facebook, right? Like, it's just, you just don't need it.
So then, if I could, I'd like to talk about like that Conquer series goes into a lot of things, and and if it's available in your church, or if there's a church that offers it, and any of your audience hears about it or seeks it out, I promise it will be worth it. It'll be hard, but it'll be worth it. It goes into basically, it goes right back to the start of your life. It says every addiction at the core of it started from a wound. So I went back, and it was like, it seems kind of crazy to say like that being bullied in grade 3 was a wound that eventually caused me to get to where I was. But I refused to forgive people, and I almost had like kind of this weird pride about it. Like, I would, if you messed with me a couple of times, it was like you were just out of my life, and I had no remorse. It was just, I wasn't going to forgive you, and there's nothing you could do about it. And so we know that like unforgiveness doesn't just stay as unforgiveness. It goes into bitterness. It turns into anger. And that's where I was when I was in Kindersley. I was just an angry person. And I'm kind of naturally a little bit on the fiery side, like on the temper side. So that wasn't good at all. So, and of course the people closest to you usually suffer from that more than the outside world. So
yeah. So would you say that Conquer series that you did through your church, was that really the big turning point for you then in your victory in porn? Was that, or was it just like a piece of the puzzle, or?
It very much solidified it, because my beliefs had changed around it, and I was actually having victory. And then I went into this Conquer series and met a couple guys that were, one of the guys is like, I'd call him like a mentor, and he's actually a client of mine, but we have this like really good relationship where I told him everything. Like, I don't know many guys who like have told, there's always one thing in your life where if I told someone this, like they would never understand. Like most people have that like thing that they're super, super ashamed of. And it could be something pretty simple, but that's how the enemy works is shame. Shame is huge. So I took the risk to tell this guy that thing that I was super ashamed of. And that was like the last piece. And that was from that Conquer series. That was when I got to know this guy. So it really solidified the direction I was going in. And from that series, there's an acronym called HALT. And basically it says that anytime you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, that is when you're going to struggle. And so yeah, that was kind of my process through having victory with porn. And it's actually funny, because I was tempted this week leading up to this interview, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're trying to be sneaky and get me get me down before I'm gonna be able to help other people with the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Yeah, and I feel like the more you try to, like, I've noticed that in my life too, like the more I'm, what am I trying to say? Like you're kind of, you're in the spotlight, you're trying to make an impact on people, you're trying to help, and it's like Satan is just in there like a dirty shirt trying to throw you off. And I just feel like, man, like we need to pray for our leaders, we need to pray for our pastors, we need to pray for those people. And I know there's a lot of people praying for me, and I'm really thankful for that, because I just feel like, yeah, like Satan's going to get you, like, and the more that he sees that you are making an impact and you are doing good work, the more he's going to be trying to get you, right?
Yeah, and it is interesting. I say lots of times I don't think the devil has to do much until you're actually doing something.
Right.
So most of us, we just get distracted and we're not really doing anything, and we fool ourselves into thinking that we're doing a lot of good in the world. But it's been my journey through everything. Through nutrition, I learned how to change myself and change my body, and then the resulting like mental clarity and the ability to kind of discipline myself. That was a result of that. So I grew in that area. I grew in the area of I grew and I gained victory over porn, and with God's help and with the help of that man that I was talking about. And now I'm helping two other guys, and it's really interesting. It's always this journey from growth to contribution, and it feels really good when you actually know that you're helping someone. And that's kind of why I started the nutrition thing, is because I don't get to see the people that I help was in SAS Power. Like I'm helping SAS Power Corporation do what they do, but it really, I don't get to see the good I'm doing. Right. Like I'm keeping people's lights on, but it's not really that gratifying to me. So once I realized that, and it's interesting because people start asking you questions, right? Like I'm sure when you started going into fitness, all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, Carla knows what she's talking about. And now it's like, well, you have a choice to make. Are you going to just be that person who knows, or are you going to take it next step and actually try and help people?
Yeah. And I love what you shared just about your pornography addiction. Do you know what the stats are? I should have looked this up. Is there some kind of stats of like the number of like, say, men, that struggle with porn? I think it's really high. Do you know what it is?
70% of men in the church struggle with porn. Right. So it's very high. And I think it's only harder. It's only harder because we have phones that are computers now, right? And yeah, it's an issue, and I think it's one of the ways that Satan is distracting and keeping men down in general, because we believe that lie. Like if people knew what I was doing, or if people knew what I'm struggling with, then they wouldn't want me to be a leader in the church. And I think a lot of guys just stay followers and don't step into leadership roles because of like these hidden sins in their life. And even if you're not a Christian, these porn is a cancer regardless of your faith. And it's not an upgrade, it's a downgrade in your life, and it will always be that.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, Josh. I appreciate that. So what would you say then, like, how do you want to make an impact? I mean, you shared your story here. You've been vulnerable. You've shared that you've had victory. And that's really what I love about your story, Josh, is that there is hope for these guys and gals that are struggling with pornography. You don't need to stay stuck there. There is hope for you, right? And so for those people that are stuck right now and they're listening to your story and they're like, okay, that sounds really good, Josh, but you don't really know how bad it is in my life, and you don't know how many times I've tried, and you don't understand, what would you say to that person?
Oh.
Where should they start? What's the first thing they should do? Should they just say, you know what, you're right, you're never going to get victory, just give up, be defeated?
I'm sure they've already decided that. yeah, there is hope. I don't know how many hundreds of times I asked for forgiveness, and like this time I'm not gonna look at porn again. But it really, this is where all addictions are kind of the same, where it's something that you want to quit, but you're having a hard time. And that's where I go back to the beliefs. I would say to that person, write down all the reasons why it's worth it.
What does it do for you? Right?
What is it doing? Because what you're getting from it is a shortcut to something that would be so much better. So when you're looking at porn, man or woman, you're looking at porn, what you're doing is you are sabotaging the intimacy with your partner that is with you now, or else your future partner, because you're building up baggage. Like, it's not real. Porn isn't real. It's fake. It's scripted. Remember, those people don't want to be there. It's like they're often drunk or high while they're filming, because even though they've accepted that as a part of their life, these actors, they know that it's not right. And there's actually documentaries on it. Like, I've actually never watched them, but there's like these documentaries called Life After Porn. So if they're bad, you have to, if they're not good documentaries, I mean, I'm not sure, but
you're not endorsing them, but you're just saying they're out there.
No, I'm just saying there are documentaries about them. I'm not sure what the quality of them are, but
right.
Yeah, I would write down all the reasons why it's worth it. And then I would write down the things that you're shortcutting. What are you getting from it? Is it that you need control over something in your life because you don't feel like you're in control of anything? Is it because you are always seeking novelty? And so what I was doing in my life when I was in Colville, so in my early 20s, was I was hitting that dopamine button. So I was forcing myself into a low dopamine state with the pornography. And they know that looking at porn is your brain lights up similarly as when you're doing cocaine. So it's a drug. And when you keep on forcing stuff like dopamine in your brain, eventually you need that stimulation to feel normal. And so I look back and I'm like, everything I did was basically a brain state change. I ate lots of sugar. I worked out super hard. I had it was lots of coffee. Even like drama, like even the way that I talked about certain people, like I was even like, I had a hard time not gossiping about people, because it was like drama and that type of stuff is like, that's another dopamine hit. Right. And so this low dopamine state, whether it's a medical issue or created issue, like what I was dealing with, is a thing to really start to avoid. And so I've actually heard of people doing dopamine fasts. And the first time I heard it was, it's you avoid everything that is super stimulating. So you basically you do a social media fast. You do a TV fast. You eat
plain food.
Kind of like plain food, like just stuff that isn't super stimulating. So you're avoiding like the chips and the candy and you're avoiding as much as you can the coffee, because I know it's hard for people to give up, but and you're basically letting your brain reset. The perfect situation to do it would be to go on a camping trip.
Did you ever do that? Did you do a dopamine fast or whatever?
I never did. And you know what? It's funny. I actually never thought of this. I don't know why I didn't. But I always gravitated to like the most violent television shows, and the most like those ones tended to be also explicit too, right? Like they also have the nudity and stuff like that in them in general. But it was, again, like it's the dopamine hits. And so when you start to have this awareness of what your behavior is actually steering you towards and why, you can start to make these changes. And so I would definitely write down the reasons why porn is worth it for you, or why any addiction is worth it. Why is it worth it? What are the good things about it? Then I would say, now you need to start to dismantle those beliefs and need to invert that. And you need to say, well, what's the truth? Because if you can't find enough reasons, if you can't make those into beliefs, then you will stay stuck. And as Christians, it makes it we have a bigger reason. We have a reason to want to be people of integrity. And that's the one thing that Christians have in common, is that we want to be people of integrity. We all have varying levels of success at that, but that is, we want the truth. We want to have integrity, and the truth is always the truth. But as our understanding of that truth grows and grows, now we have the option to kind of level up and to grow past that. And then the awesome thing is that when you start to grow, people notice it, and now you can be the person giving them a hand up, and you might not be able to kind of see yourself being that person, but you will be that person, because
I think it's
empathy is pretty important, and you develop that empathy by going through that stuff.
So true. And I think it's interesting, like your story, right? Because there you were, this young kid, bullied in grade 3, and you had these beliefs that you weren't smart, and you had this belief that if anybody really got to know you, they wouldn't like you, right? Like, I mean, that's a lot of things that to try to avoid in your life, right? And now here you are,
Oh, yeah.
Struggling with pornography your whole life, having 2 years of victory, and now you're able to help other people. And isn't that just like an amazing example of what can happen in your life when you are able to be vulnerable? If you weren't vulnerable with these guys that are coming to you now for help, you wouldn't be able to help them.
Well, and that moment with my friend, where I told him like the thing that I was the most ashamed of, that, like, you can't get more vulnerable than that. And I guess if I was going to add one more thing on that list for those people to do, is you need to find a person like that. You can't do it on your own. You need someone to help you to change your beliefs, because I did the whole accountability partners thing. It doesn't really work if your heart's not in it. You need to find someone who is like committed to you and is willing to work through these beliefs. And yeah, I'm super grateful. And it's interesting because as soon as I started to realize that I need people, I started to make good friends, like really good friends. And I had believed the lie that like, I'm fine by myself. The whole I didn't call it the lone wolf thing, but that's basically what I was doing. And the lone wolf dies a terrible death. He basically starves to death because he can't get anything. We need our wolf pack. We need our guys that are on our side no matter what. And I know the dynamics are a little bit different with women, but it's the same thing.
Same idea. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Josh. I appreciate that so much. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, Josh. If there's somebody who's really struggling with pornography and they need that person and they don't really have anybody maybe in their circle, or maybe they don't want to be vulnerable with anybody, could they go to you, Josh? Would they be able to go check you up on Instagram, send you a message? Would you be willing to talk to somebody like that and help them out?
Yeah. I'd talk to them for sure. I would say that I can definitely be a person that you would talk to, and I'm definitely not gonna judge you because I've been there. I'm super thankful that I dealt with all these things before I started to act out, because where you're headed to, if you're not willing to deal with this, is either you're gonna cheat on your spouse, you're gonna start leading a promiscuous lifestyle, or you're gonna end up doing things that are worse, that are illegal. And nobody starts out thinking they're going to do those type of things. And that's where you're headed. And like, I'm not trying to just scare you, but things aren't going to get better if you don't start to take some steps to deal with it. And if talking to me would make you feel better, I'd be definitely willing to do that. And I definitely would still be saying the same thing to you. I'd be encouraging you to really find those people. And it's worth it. Like it's worth the risk to find those people in your life. It might be a slow process, but you know those people that actually they already know the person that they need to get to know. I'll say that, make that bold statement, because I know the people in my life that I'm scared to invest in the relationship because I know that they're no BS people. You know those people in your life. They're the people that you avoid because they have integrity, and that scares you right now because you don't have integrity. And if you are willing to pursue those people, maybe you need to go to a different church. Maybe you need to go to a church. But you need those people. And if I can help lead you and help you to make those choices to find those people, I would definitely be willing to do that.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for sharing. Josh, if people want to kind of get in contact with you, maybe check out some of your nutrition stuff, or just like send you a DM or check you out on Facebook, where would they go?
The main thing that I do is Instagram, and it's at Joshua Brown Wellness. And if you reach out to me there, that's the best thing to do. I do have a Facebook page, but it's kind of a little bit neglected.
So at Joshua Brown Nutrition or Wellness?
At Joshua Brown Wellness.
At Joshua Brown Wellness. Okay. On Instagram. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
awesome.
they'll know it's me.
Yeah.
If they've seen this, they'll know.
Yeah. Good. And you can always contact me, you guys, too. Send me a message or something, and I can get you in touch with Josh. Josh, I just appreciate you sharing this so much, and I just really see you, rising up as a leader. You're a leader in your church right now. You're leading in nutrition. And I just really excited about what God's doing in your life. And it's just like this example to me of someone who's just this everyday guy who's allowing God to work in his life, and he's allowing himself to be vulnerable, which is tough, in order to help others. Not to say, oh, look at me, I gained victory, look how amazing I am. It's like, no, I am struggling as well, and I've been struggling, but there is hope, right? I appreciate that.
Yeah, and if I could say one more thing.
Yeah.
A huge part of that breakthrough, and I don't know why I didn't say this before, it was even my relationship with God was always an effort of will. And when I really believed that God loved me no matter what, and there's nothing I can do, and like grace is something that can be abused. Like grace is grace because it's there, it's free, it's for us. And once I truly believed that, then it became like being connected with God became so much easier, because it's like, well, if I miss one day of devotions, like it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. But if I miss reading my Bible, it doesn't mean that I'm not a good person, because, well, I don't know if you've ever had that kind of struggle too, but
no, I have.
It's always this process of like, I was always living in the doing, like do it. But I wasn't being the person who did those sort of things. And like, that's where be, do, have, pornography is in the have. You're stealing. If you're a person who's starting with have, you're the person who is stealing, who's taking those shortcuts. And so I was always in the doing instead of the being. And when I am a son of God, then I do the things that Christians do. I do the things, and then I get the benefits. And so that's what happens when you start to tackle those beliefs, because you're living in the doing. Right now, if you're struggling with pornography, it's because you're living in the doing and the having. If you start to work on the beliefs, now you're starting to become the person that defeats pornography and defeats addictions and is able to be disciplined, because that's where we want to be. We want to be able to do the things that we want to do. And you can't really do that when you're living in defeat.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love that. Let's stop right there. We'll end right there, Josh. Great words. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you so much. And I'm looking forward to just, staying in contact and just hearing more about how things are going with you. So thanks for sharing, Josh.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. This episode is brought to you by my company, Power Fitness Online. We are a tight-knit fitness community, and we guide you every step of the way to get fit and stay fit through our live workouts, nutrition coaching, and incredible support team. Go to powerfitnessedson.com to learn more. Thank you for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a positive review on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I would love to see your comments. I would love to know what you think about this episode and interact with you. I love hearing from you. Once again, I'm Carla Rand, and this is The Carla Rand Show, and I can't wait to see you next week for our next episode.